Well done. Fantastic. So let's get cracking with some questions here. So we got the first, for the awesome folks from Lego, have you considered not releasing global tokens to the wider platform to prevent people from directly using them?
This is a good question. So, I mean, I think one important thing to say is like some of the learnings we had are from like past experience and past mistakes. Let's say like hindsight is 2020, right? So one thing that happened with us is that the development of components happened right after we started building the first design tokens. So what happened was, as soon as we had the first set of global tokens, we started building the first set of components. So we had to build with global tokens because we didn't have as much like an alias set of tokens that was very strong, like big enough, like branded enough to cover all of our use cases. So we had to build and share those for all the teams to build layouts on top of it. So they were already released. And now, like after a couple of months, we realized, okay, all of the problems that come with it after we needed to, especially when partnering, and I guess I can also hand over the mic so Jess can talk from like partnering with all the user groups and all the designers. But when we started to have those refactors on the global areas, we started to see, oops, this is going to affect everything from the engineering point of view. So yes, I guess we wish we could not export those tokens anymore, but we are right now at a stage where people are using it and we don't have the capacity to just go and replace them everywhere with tokens and with aliases. So what we can do is an educational piece of like, look at the advantages. You won't have to go and have to refactor your design if we go and change it, because it's not really our responsibility to go and fix everything. But yeah, other than this, no, we can't just go back on this. So yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I guess is, so we have content designers, and the one reason why I brought the color ramp together, which I've also was reminded by one of my other developers, that the whole color ramp is actually built from the colors of the Lego bricks. So it's all the ramp is actually, every single ramp you're seeing has got a connection to an official Lego brick. That was being utilized by content designers, and that's obviously a global token. So that has to be brought into the environment. And it's quite difficult to separate that out compared to the size and the spacing tokens. But we know we've already caused ourselves a problem by bringing the alias in, because obviously once the component layer comes in, we then have to take everything that's attached to aliases and stick that to component tokens. So we know we've caused ourselves a bit of headaches. But the other thing is, when it comes to the business point of view, they wanted to see value. They wanted to see us doing something. If we had just like sat there for 6 months going, yeah, we're going to build this these components, this system, they'd be like, what have you been doing for 6 months? We had to kind of put something out there and show it was tangible and show it was bringing some kind of value to the company. So we probably jumped ahead when we probably shouldn't have done, but we've learned from it. And of course, we will learn as we go a bit more. So,
Excellent. Thank you. We got a question for the people at Jet. Sorry, I've lost it. I was scrolling too quickly. Sorry. Was the system consolidation a business requirement or design team initiative? If it was the latter, how did you convince the business to kind of work on that?
Yeah, it was kind of a business requirement. We wasted a lot of like time, money, and energy by having like two different teams doing kind of the same thing, like side by side. Like, and it made no sense from a business perspective. Like, we deliver so much more now, like as one single team. And there's really just a lot of benefit for us, but also our users as well. So definitely business.
Okay, so this is leading on from this question, I guess, because it's kind of for everyone. So how do we then measure the coverage of the design system? I guess in your case, across platforms, but in general, how do we? So let's start off with Jet and then come in with the other ones.
So how do we measure how it's being used?
Yes.
So we do like a lot of like feedback, analytics in Figma as well to like see how many teams like using the button, like is amazing. And then we can track that from like a development perspective as well, like to see how many teams are, I mean, I'll let Maryia say.
Yeah, from developers' perspective, currently we use forms. First of all, like trying to find out which teams are using what, how happy they are about it. And we are planning to introduce, we have a tool called scorecards, which shows which teams on which version of specific packages. And we want to involve it to see which teams are using our design system packages and on which version they are. And basically then we will see a clear picture of adoption.
Okay, great.
I'm Mike. I want to preface with a bit of context. So our design system's been around for like 8-9 years now. So it's fairly sort of down the road. And our design system mainly serves like a suite of financial products. In case you don't know, Societe Generale, it's a bank, by the way. I didn't say that in my talk. But so imagine like a sort of app store of financial investment apps. So now one of the requirements to sort of be on our platform is to use the design system. So there's that. But I'd say that sort of, I won't go too deep in, because I don't think we're pushing sort of real heavy sort of data analytics. It's more sort of a human-driven initiative where it's like our design team is working like really hard on design reviews and design-led projects and things like that. So we sort of rely on those initiatives to push our design system out and to make sure that we're getting consistency.
Excellent, thank you. And for the Lego group?
Yeah, in our case, we started from scratch, and then because we decided to not really migrate the old library that we had and start with a couple of new components, we try to measure adoption from the number of squads that are consuming them, but we don't really expect everyone to consume every single component. But we do heavily encourage people to, if they are rebuilding their designs, so for instance, with the product listing page that we showed, the design in our presentation, that they use the components, and if there are any components missing, that then we can either our team can build or they can contribute with the contribution guide. But yeah, for the moment, I think we have 7 squads out of maybe 24 using it, but not all of them are front-end, full stack squads. So yeah, we try to not tie ourselves too much to adoptions in our OKRs just because it's quite tricky. But yeah, at the moment it's number of squads.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So leading on from that, so Henry talked about ammunition against stakeholder decisions. What's the main KPI then do you defend design initiatives with?
I don't really know if we focus too much on specific KPIs, to be honest with you. Like I said, at a platform level now, it's compulsory to use a design system. So that strips a certain amount. But there's always fight with projects. There's always fight with developers. We have we're using a lot of our framework is based on Bootstrap CSS. We're web-based. So obviously there's a consistent fight against custom CSS. And so there are sort of various measures that we go to with design reviews, but yeah, it's not perfect. And so, but I will say it's a consistent struggle there against all the forces.
I saw some smiles from the engineers over here. I don't know, do you want to comment on any of that?
No, it was funny to hear that they had fights with developers. We don't have fights, right? We have a great team. Collaborate. We're fine.
Excellent. Okay, so then in that case, I've actually got a question on that. So how do you get developers interested in starting a design system from scratch? And since you guys are not fighting, maybe you guys want to pick that one up first.
Actually, in Just Eat, the design system started from developers, which was really cool because we started with UI components library. Yes, we had designs and we were following the design approach, but it was really interesting because when we found out that designers came up with this design language, which they tried to push, we adopted it. We just said, yeah, sure, we have our set of variables, we can align them with your tokens and we can work together. And I think it started we had some frictions with teams, with product teams, obviously, because they had strict deadlines, they had their roadmaps, and they were just we will build everything ourselves, we don't need your design system. this took obviously a lot of conversations about why they needed to use it. But yeah, when people start using design systems, they obviously see benefits, which is super cool.
Excellent. Good. For you guys?
Yeah. I can take like developers in general, they like everything that's shiny, new. And we use that like as an opportunity to bring also like new technologies in the tech stack that we believe that were like the best, not in terms only of design, but also like performance and accessibility. So we use this as a form of like moving a bit away from JavaScript and CSS and JavaScript. So we moved towards CSS modules and also towards TypeScript, because much of our legacy component library is in JavaScript only and using style components. So this is also, and also like we try to bring in more best practices in our components, trying to be as few JavaScript as possible, more native components, more accessibility from the start using the ARIA guidance. So this kind of thing help to like get the buy-in from other teams, even if they don't, I don't really want to refactor my page, but they see the gains from performance and accessibility. So it's easier to get them to this has been a win.
Okay, fantastic. So you mentioned accessibility, so I'm going to use this as a segue to my next question here. 4 Legos to start with. When making global color changes, where in the hierarchy do you verify everything is still accessible?
Yeah, so
She handed that one over quickly.
So one reason we kind of came up with the idea of having the color ramp was in our CMS, you can put any color you want in. So a content producer can go put yellow background in and put white text on it. And we're like, what are you doing? So one reason why we brought the color ramp in was to be able to do those checks. We have Lego defined colors. That's in the CMS as well. So if a producer comes in now, basically it flags. You're failing a compliant accessibility rating in the page, and it won't even publish the page anymore. So we've got that, and the one thing we're trying to do with the color ramp now is to kind of, obviously APCA isn't officially, well, WCAG 3 isn't official yet, and then eventually it will be, and that's kind of what we kind of created the groundwork for that. So all our kind of color library works on both WCAG 2, and eventually when that becomes official, then WCAG 3 as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So yeah, and again, everything we're doing, if you put like black text on like a white background, that obviously passes. If you put it on a yellow background, we're now forcing the color in reverse. So that's something else that we've got from a design point of view.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Speaking of accessibility, there's actually a question here for Jet. What, if any, challenges did you face when switching the brand color to orange? This is asked by, yes, getting some giggles from the audience here. Yes. This is actually a question by someone who also works for an orange brand. No names mentioned though, just the color.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. Orange isn't great. So we have kind of varying tokens of orange. So we have our like pure like brand orange, which we use for like marketing and like brand specific things. But then we also have like interactive orange, which Molly is somewhere here, and worked really closely with brand to kind of improve our accessibility. I mean, we're never going to hit like small white text on our orange background. Like that's just never going to happen. But we have pushed that. We have very strict guidelines around, 19 pixels. You have to use large text on our orange backgrounds, but orange comes with limitations in design, unfortunately. So it's just trying to figure out like how they're going to work best for the brand and trying to be very creative, obviously, within your kind of like AA compliance is what I would say on that.
Any other comments on accessibility? Have you guys run into any problems?
Yeah, of course. Our brand colors are red. So
I was hinting.
yes. And that's not accessibility. It's just like, I remember when I first came, there was this website and it was like the key action like was in red. And it was like, okay. But yeah, so I'll talk about that. We got around that by convincing brand that we're designing really operational interfaces so we can use black. So that was the first step. The second step, and I'm glad that I got to answer this question because we've done loads of work. We have a system which we call adaptive colors. And this is with like a whole lot of sort of CSS trickery. We have like, let's say 4 operational colors. and we have like 3 or 4 backgrounds that you can put those operational colors on. The colors automatically change depending on what background they're on. And so instead of designers having to say, all right, I'm going to use info blue like 300 here because it's got this background or whatever, they can just use info blue and it's already there. So yeah, we're really proud of that. We've written about it. I'm going to plug that. But yeah, often that breaks though, and that's not fun. Because then like 300 products been like, oh, you've broken our accessibility. We're like, yeah, sorry.
And how do you deal with that?
We fix it.
Okay. There you go. You just fix it. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great answer. So this one here is for Lego. Do your designers use the same version numbers as the engineers? And do you have any tips for branching in Figma? It's a very specific question.
I'll start. Yeah, so versioning. Yeah, well, we always get kind of confused about what version, because we have a version of scroll, and then we have a version of, what's the thing we've
Yeah, we don't follow, like the component library and the design tokens are 2 separate libraries, so they are both versions, but they don't follow the same version. So
yeah. And with what we're building, it's so early on. So we've kind of got, I guess we've almost got like a version 3. So I've got the components that are working in version 3, but I'm literally struggling right now is I want to create a version 4. I'm like, well, I've got all these components over here. That's all linked to people's work. I'm now building a version 4 with some new alias values. Hang on a minute, all the components are over there. Now I've got to come over here. And how do I link my designers to this? I'm literally in that state right now. Versioning is going to be a nightmare, I think. Yes, branching might help that. And I know that other designers who are working are playing around with branching. But yeah, it's something we're still working out, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's something that we need to kind of figure out. But versioning is going to be painful eventually in Figma as we build more and more components out and as we have more versions to get down the line. But yeah, it's a learning curve, definitely.
Yeah, can imagine. Actually, speaking of versioning, so well, you kind of touched on this, this chosen strategy for, is there a specific strategy or how does that look?
So on the code point of view, like from the component library to the monorepo, it's a bit easier to control. So we use Yarn for like dealing with the monorepo and the Yarn workspace, and we can have set a resolution for the whole monorepo. So we say, this is the version. You can't really go up or down. Like everyone's going to use the same thing. And the good thing is like we don't really need to worry about upgrading the whole front end for like minor or patch versions. We release them, we let people know, and then people can go and upgrade for everyone. But major versions, because they lead to breaking changes, right now what we're doing is our squad takes the responsibility for going and fixing everywhere and everything. And this has been painful. I wouldn't say it's very sustainable for the long run, but it is the way that we chosen how to deal with it. Like in the future, I believe like having more maintainers in different squads will help us with that. Like, oh, this is the reason why we had to do this breaking change. Now please go and collaborate with us on that. But for now, this is how, okay, we have like a few afternoons of pain, like having to copy and paste a lot of like token changes, but it is how we chosen to do. So we have the versions, we try to be very careful because we have broken out like some things before by upgrading our dependencies and oops, this should have been a major change, but we released as a minor. Now we are being very careful with that. And then major changes we take care, and the others, no, we don't.
Okay. And how do you guys deal with versioning?
So from the design side, we do different versioning to development, kind of same as Lego. We run on like completely different versioning. So we don't really do like minor releases in design. We just do like big major releases. We've got a new restyling or we're completely changing how we do the design system, which may be coming a little bit later this year. So we handle that quite differently, but similar to your kind of like support model with that, like 'cause even with like smaller component releases, Geordie, who's here, for example, like did a complete new bottom sheet, and that was a complete like breaking change from the design side. So he was absolutely amazing and like worked with all the designers and just updated absolutely everything. Like, as you said, like it's really just about like collaboration and making sure that everyone else who's using your design system is happy as well.
And any you said it was different from engineering. So how were you
So basically, because we're supporting multiple frameworks and releasing different libraries, especially in different ways, because one is released as one single library and another releases different components separately, we can't just go and update everything and everywhere. And we have like a lot of teams which use our library. So we try to clearly communicate each release. We have change logs, change sets. We post release updates on Slack just to make sure that teams are aware that something changed. And obviously they can go and update when they're ready to it. There is no rush, with bug fixes obviously, but normally they are very easy to update. But with major, each team can go and update when they're ready.
Excellent. I've just found one question just added, which I think is quite interesting. And this, I think, is you, Henry, because you used the word surviving, and someone says surviving is a very strong word. Are we creating a situation where we're trying to force a square peg into a round hole and creating problems for everyone with design systems? There we go. The tough questions in this Q&A session.
First of all, I was being dramatic.
Okay. You?
But yeah, round peg in a square hole, I completely disagree. I think if you're coming to design systems with that approach, you're doing it wrong. I think it's the absolute opposite. So, okay, you're starting with a hole, and you're building use cases for that hole.
Okay, continue.
I mean, to explain,
Cautiously.
so basically, I feel like square peg in a round hole is the kind of mindsets where it's like, we're going to build a design system first and then build products. I don't think that's really how it should work, and how it can't really work like that, in my opinion. You have to build a product first and then build a design system out of your product.
Okay. You saved that very well. Thank you. I was worried where that was going.
Sorry.
I've almost regretted asking that question, but now I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to a different question. I think it's better. A question for Lego. Do you use the Lego analogy to describe design system to stakeholders? That's some good questions here today.
That's a good question, but yeah, no, I didn't have to. What? Just a shame.
You used IKEA. That goes down the right treat. Brilliant. So, continuing with Lego here, do you engage consumers, designers, and developers into coming up with alias token naming conventions? And if you do that, how do you then do that? How do you engage them?
No, so currently we've just kind of, because it's such in its infancy, we have the 4 leads, so we haven't really kind of gone through that kind of sharing to other designers yet. It's probably something we should do to get more feedback, to make sure that what we're creating from the kind of the object, the modifier, actually makes sense to the designers. That is something we need to start doing. I mentioned before about that iteration loop of making sure we get that feedback in. But like I said, we're in such an early stage right now that we're just trying to get the basics out there first, and then we'll start to iterate on those things. But yeah, getting feedback in is important at any stage of design, to be honest with you. So
Yeah, absolutely. So for the dev team, so you guys chat a little bit about the culture issues. Can you expand a little bit on what have you come across?
Yeah, definitely. So we had like 2 very different teams, like who had never worked together before, but also like they're both very passionate about their products. Like people who work in design systems care like a lot about what they're doing, but because they've never really talked, like we'd never really worked together, like to all of a sudden start working together, like there was going to have to be compromise somewhere, and trying to like navigate how we were going to compromise and what things we would compromise, like was difficult. Like it wasn't easy, but we got there and we're all much happier now because of it. Like it was good to see like the best of both, because we've all had like really good things out of our design systems. So much happier after, but it was definitely like a struggle at times, just like trying to get our way through.
So you kind of have not just designers, engineers, you have the 2 different cultures as well. So there's
definitely.
A lot of...
Like it's just like different ways of working. Like we would approach the exact same problem like 2 completely different ways, just because of that's how we'd always done it. Like no one's challenged that. Obviously, like we've evolved on our 2 like individual sides previously, but to all of a sudden like change your complete ways of working, how you would like communicate with your team, like got now just so many more people, like that was just a really challenging like moment. But it's better now because of it, which is
Excellent. Good. Glad to hear it. So Henry, you were talking about your design system that you guys are using are sort of further down the line a little bit, and you got a council setup you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about how does actually work?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, our council is made up of some designers and some developers, and we have to have that mix always. And currently, I think it's like, we try and keep it small as well. Currently, it's 4 people. It's been 4 people for a couple of years now. And we just had a big change. Like we've changed out design system technical leads. And when it comes to, I actually really call it elections because it's not like that. But it's like if one of our teammates is really passionate about design systems and really pushing, then first we'll maybe work with them as a contributor, and eventually maybe that can sort of move on to joining the council as well. And that happened to a designer just recently. And sort of the prerequisites are if they have enough time to work on design systems, because in our team structure, we're sometimes working on other projects and things like that. So if they've got time to actually give proper time to the council, then that's sort of one of the major ones. Then the rest of the setup-wise, feedback we collect through GitHub. We have a lot of processes in place for validation and things like that. And we have different ways so that when someone suggests something, we're sort of analyzing at the first point, like, is this something new? Is this an upgrade? Is it whatever? So we're giving it that label. We're maybe trying to assess the complexity of it as well. So we just have a good idea of the work needed. And then when it comes to priority, I talked about it in my talk, it's like, if there are business use cases for it, then we can prioritize it. If not, then we probably can't. But yeah, with the rest of the governance, our systems of, I think something that's good actually, the council's been around for like 2-3 years now, and it's sort of maintaining itself. So I think we're pretty comfortable with the setup that we've got.
Nice. Do any of you have anything similar, or how is it?
I mean, we're quite a different team. Like, I think we're 20, maybe just over 20. Like, we've got 5 designers and then, like many more developers in our team. So we're a very different structure, and we're full-time on the design system as well. Like, we obviously help where it's needed, but very different structure, but super interesting, like how that's working for you guys.
Very nice. Excellent. And at the Lego group?
Yeah, like I said, we've got the 4 leads from a design point of view. When we started kicking off, we did have developers involved. And we do have like a kind of, there's a weekly session, isn't there, between the kind of the business side and shops up, mainly because the kids side and the education side, they're nowhere near even building components out yet. So, but I do like the idea of the council, and that's probably something that we should probably start looking at from both design and development coming together. I think it's a really good initiative.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting setup. I think there's many people will be looking into that. We're working on a project right now where I think it could be quite an interesting approach to take. So speaking of kind of designers and engineers working together, I do want to mention the fact that we actually do have engineer designer on talk. I'm sorry you're by yourself today, Henry, but we are. You've seen the pictures of Snoop Dogg and Katy Perry around here. There was some paper cutout, so I almost grabbed one. Yes, that's what I was thinking. We should have done that. So working as designers and engineers together, what have you found to be the biggest challenges? Let's start with the Jet team here. What have you found to be?
That's a hard one because we get on so well.
Yeah, I mean, you did say that earlier, so,
Challenges, I think my thing is terminology from like my personal perspective. Like, we can be talking about the same thing but using completely different words. Like, I think for me that's like a big challenge for myself. So I think a lot of repetition, making sure we're actually both talking about the same thing, for me is key.
Yeah, I think for developers, it's like knowing when is the right time to involve developers into the discussions, because if we will be involved too early, it will take a lot of time. Because basically designers' ways of working is, I can't say that it's faster, but it's just different speed, and they have so many iterations through quite a lot of ideas, and we're involved when they think they have the decision, and then we come and just like try to adjust it, which I think is the right way.
That's a team that gets on really, really well.
But this is challenging to know when for both of us, right? To know when to be involved. But I think we're on the right way.
Excellent. And how is it the Lego group? What's your challenges? Engineers' thoughts.
Yeah, cool. I think, we do communicate really well. I think we do got to a very good group of knowing what we expect out of each other. Probably the biggest challenges is around understanding things that we both have to do, but sometimes are more difficult from our side, one side or the other. For instance, versioning from the engineering side, I think it's more straightforward, but as Jazz was mentioning before, in Figma, it's a nightmare. And it's not as easy for an engineer to understand why, branches should be enough, but it's not, because Figma is not prepared for this. And in the other way around, I think breaking changes in tokens may seem less of a problem from Figma because it just changed something and then everything trickles down. But in code, it's hours and hours of having to replace things and getting other teams to QA and code review your changes and just making everything more fragile when merging a change. So I guess those things explaining to each other why those are an issue, that I think we had those moments of oh, please don't do this at this moment because of that. But now, we are in a good group of we understand the challenges.
I think you nailed it on the head, really. I think it's the whole breaking changes, and we probably will make more. Sorry, because we are finding better ways of doing things. Like in Figma, there's now dimensions. Sorry, tokens plugin is our dimensions is something that's going to come down the line where we've got all of that split out, sizing, spacing, borders all split out. That can live in one space. But of course, we've tied that all up in the system now. So eventually, that could be quite painful. But one thing I'm trying to do is also educate the other designers, because on their side, they don't have any technical, nothing's been built yet. So I need to keep reminding those guys, hey, we have something living here, something that is anything you break, we are actually going to feel that pain. You're not going to feel it, we're going to feel it. So I have to try and educate the other designers that are in that kind of group to try and make sure they understand what's happening on there. But yeah, I'd say breaking changes is probably the big one, that just to fully understand what it can do. Because like you said, in Figma, I can do a find and replace, but you can't really do that in the development environment. It's out there in the world, so it's a much bigger thing to try and fix. So yeah.
Excellent. Okay. We are coming towards the end. I have one question, and this is for all of you individually. And I wanted to call it a quick fire round, but we'll see how it goes. So this actually comes on from talking about the ups and downs of working on design system. But what has been the most rewarding for you? And that's why I feel like this is an individual answer from each of you. What do you find to be the most rewarding thing of working in design systems? Starting with you, Henry.
Yeah, okay. I think when I saw my first component out in the wild, when I released the first thing I've worked on, I was really proud of myself, I'll be honest. But now, these days, I'm kind of proud of the team, actually, and how we've been managing. Because like I said, we have a limited workforce, and we really rely heavily on contributors and things like that. So just the fact that we're still going, it's 8 years on, I'm pretty proud of that, to be able to say, we've been pushing, and we've been still releasing stuff every 2 weeks. So yeah.
Excellent.
I was going to say team, but he stole it. So I think what I'm going to say is just the continual progression. For me, I really enjoy working on something that is constantly evolving. I think it gets a bit boring, as you were kind of saying, if it's constantly the same. So I really enjoy when we hit that next peak, that really sparks it.
For me, it's actually because we don't know exactly how many teams are using our components, and as I said, we are planning to add some automation there, but basically sometimes people come to me or to our team and say how cool something is in our design system, and we we didn't expect this, and it's so rewarding to hear that people use it and that people finding good stuff in it, and that you even didn't know about it, that they use it and they are happy with it. So yeah, it's really rewarding.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, it's it's very close, feeling both when we got the first banner out live in production and seeing something that after months of work we had developed and it's in production. It was really cool. But I think nowadays it's more about having positive feedback from other teams and seeing that our component library and design systems grow is living, even if we kind of need to stop, sometimes we need to stop working on it as frequently as we used to because of all the priorities on the team. And people still mention it, and people still come and say, oh, this is so cool, I want more components, I want more designs. And you just see like, oh, it's living and breathing. It's like it's out of my hands now. It's in the world. It's in the wild. It's quite rewarding. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, echo all those things that have been said. I think the one thing for me, Lego is a massive, massive organisation, and it's certain areas where teams will go off and work on their own. This design system is the first time where the 4 user groups have come together to try and make something consistent, and to make that happen, I think will be fantastic. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do, but to be able to have something where you can just change an area and you've got a button that goes from business to kids to shop, that would be such an amazing achievement. So that's where I'm seeing it. So
awesome, brilliant. Okay, on that we're going to wrap up the Q&A. So thank you so much to our speakers, and then I'm going to do some quick chat. Thank you.